That was the worst watermelon I've ever seen.
Hello, this is Jeff of Tau Mouse, and a reminder that we do not use AI here. While you've browsed YouTube, you probably run across videos with thumbnails such as these. They're absolutely ridiculous and very deceptive. Now, obviously, these are all fake images created by AI or artificial intelligence. And this one is my absolute favorite. It has a little cooling fan on it. What? I started looking at some of my own thumbnails, and I noticed that it's possible that people might think these are AI-created images too. After all, many of these slugs look like nothing we've ever seen coming out of a 12-gauge shotgun before. But I assure you, these are real, tangible projectiles that our talented viewers have created. They use their own brains to come up with these ideas, and they use their own hands to create them. Now, I think the AI fakery videos are just going to get worse and worse on YouTube. So it's going to be important to differentiate from those and ensure our viewers that this is human-created content. On stage tonight, we have a very unusual projectile. Imagine that. This time designed by Evan Perry of Texas. Now, Evan Perry is AI, but in this case, that means absolutely incredible. And Evan has created so many slugs that he has his own playlist of all his creations over the years. Now, this particular slug is called the Vortex. What makes this projectile unusual is it is equally balanced. In fact, you could shoot it in either direction. It looks more like a spool than a projectile. And it has these little spirals on the top and bottom that Evan believes will do something. Perhaps make it rotate in flight. Now, I believe these are made out of drawer pulls, probably made out of a pot metal or something. And they're very light, 8.4 grams, 0.29 ounces, or 128 grains, which lands between the weight of a 9mm bullet and a 45 ACP. Now, this is a cutaway showing all the components in the shell, and we will be using a two-piece discarded sabot. The sabots keep the projectile centered in the barrel and ensures that it leaves the barrel perfectly straight. And that's very important because these are designed to be stable without any spin. And that alone may seem like an impossibility. This thing is neither nose heavy or tail heavy. There's no fins on it. And it definitely looks like it would be anything but aerodynamically stable at subsonic or even supersonic speeds. Now, I wanted to test these at different velocities, so I started out with 10 grains, and then we went to 12, 15, and went all the way up to 18 grains of E3. Now, one of my concerns was, since these are kind of made out of pot metal, they're not particularly strong, and I was worried that if I try to push them too hard, they may actually break and ruin the entire test. So we're trying to play it safe here, but we'll also be able to see how these perform at different speeds. As I mentioned before, we will be using a smoothbore shotgun. This is a Mossberg 500, Danny's old shotgun. Now, Brian from Cincinnati, he recently sent me a new extended super long cable for the remote trigger. I did not adjust it correctly, and I couldn't get it to work right. I didn't have the right Allen wrench to make the final adjustment. So I'll just be shooting these manually today. So let's get on with the tests.
Okay, the first one of the Vortex slugs, we're going to try using only 10 grains of the E3 powder. That was 1,026 feet per second.
In this high-speed camera shot, we're taking a look at the transitional ballistics. This is the moment the projectile leaves the barrel and clears the muzzle blast. And this was filmed at over 17,000 frames a second. Now, this is actually a pretty critical moment of time because the muzzle blast can knock the projectile off course, and even the sabots can bump into the projectile and knock it off course. But the important thing here is that projectile is stable without any spin.
That's where it hit. very close, and there it is. It was just hanging there. These are rather quiet, the 10 grain load.
Now, even though we had an incomplete powder burn and a lower velocity, the projectile still did very well. In fact, much to my surprise, you can see the slug rotating in flight clockwise. Let me show you again. While that amount of spin is not enough to really stabilize it, it is quite surprising that, shot from a smoothbore, the projectile is spinning at all. So that spin can only be generated by this vortex shaped nose. And what's interesting is Evan also supplied some that go in the opposite direction. For the next two tests, we'll be using 12 grains of E3.
It's a little better.
And just like that, the projectile is now supersonic. And the stability and accuracy was pretty darn good. And if you had keen eyes, you'll notice that the projectile is spinning counterclockwise, or if you're British, anti-clockwise. And this more or less verifies that swirly pattern on the nose of these things do affect the rotation. I never thought that would be possible, to be completely honest with you.
That's about where I was aiming, actually. I was just aiming about an inch below the target, and it seemed to work pretty well. It was a little louder, a little more velocity. We had 1,136 feet per second on that one, I think.
In this next test, we will again be using 12 grains of the E3. Now, in real time, it looked like I completely missed, but here it comes. The rotation is clockwise again, and you could see that I just grazed the ear ever so slightly. So I'll take that as a hit. For the next two shots, we'll step it up a little bit to 15 grains of E3.
A little better. 1333.
Now this one is again rotating clockwise. I should note that each slug had a left hand and a right hand rotational nose on it. I don't know what to call it. And it just depended on how I loaded it, to be honest. And I wasn't even aware of this fact until after these tests.
Okay, so I was aiming at the center of the torso, hit up here in his arm. You can see how it shot upwards and then exited right there. So not great accuracy. And what's interesting, in the high speed, I could see him rotating about as fast as a Foster slug rotates, which is kind of surprising. It was rotating clockwise. We're not using a rifled choke or rifled barrel or anything. It's a smoothbore, so we're getting rotation, which is, I think that's what Evan expected to see. Okay, we have another 15 grain load. We moved the target a little bit closer because these things, as we speed them up, the accuracy seems to be getting worse. Just an observation or maybe a coincidence. Let's see how these do against the roll of ballistic toilet paper. 1169 on that one.
While we did see a drop in velocity on this one, the Slug seems to like that speed a little better than pushing it to 1,300 plus feet per second. The accuracy certainly was better. Now, the roll of toilet paper isn't very heavy, but it still has a lot more mass than the projectile. The projectile will actually completely penetrate it before the roll of toilet paper actually starts moving. Now, in this shot, we had a slight counterclockwise rotation, but it was also weaving around quite a bit, bobbing around. And that is how the projectile self-stabilizes. It's still accurate despite that. In this early railgun test, you could see that the projectile is also weaving back and forth, self-stabilizing. Quite a bit different than a fin-stabilized projectile.
All right, next up we've got the lead plate and the most powerful loaded one, 18 grains of E3.
Now, in this shot, we had a very, very clean launch. No waggling at all. Very, very stable. And we also had virtually no rotation at all. And that's probably due to having a very strong bow shock wave at the nose, preventing any kind of airflow from affecting the rotation. Now, although we did not get a chronograph reading, velocity should be around 1,500 feet per second.
If I don't do the lead plate, people get really bothered because they think that's really part of the test, so I try to oblige them and show it. And you can see the difference. I mean, that was a hole all the way through it, even though it was, I think it was a weak spot. A lot of people pointed that out from the last Slug. And there's our little Vortex. It's probably deeper than it appears. We got the stem is kind of buried down there. There's nothing on the backside, no bulge or anything. So anyway, again, I was aiming in the center and it shot a little high and left, even at only about 14 yards. Okay, this is our last one, 18 grains. And I was gonna do a gel block shot, but because of my remote trigger on the stand wasn't working, I can't really do that. But luckily I have this watermelon and hopefully I can hit a dead center. We can only hope. Here, let's give it a try. That was the worst watermelon I've ever seen.
Now in this shot, surprisingly, we see a slight counterclockwise rotation. And once again at these higher velocities, it started shooting high and left. Now as we changed the velocity and increased it, it also changed the point of impact quite a bit. And that can make it a little bit frustrating to get accurate shots. Now the Vortex slugs proved to be strong enough to shoot at higher velocities, and that was again one of my concerns. But it was still really interesting to see how these things behaved at all these various velocities.
Now I know why this was on sale. That was an awful watermelon. Look at that, it's almost hollow in there. You see that? Oh my gosh. What is wrong with that? And it's tiny too. Shrinkflation, I tell you. But yeah, it hit a little high and left again. And even though I was trying to compensate for that. So these things somewhat accurate, not as laser accurate as we had hoped. Accurate enough to hit most of the targets. Let's put it that way.
Again, the accuracy wasn't horrible. That was mostly due to just changing the recipe so much that the point of impacts change. Now, I went into this thinking that these would be very difficult or even impossible to stabilize, but every single one flew very well. And the fact that many of them actually rotated just kind of blew my mind. I didn't think that was possible. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and were equally as surprised as I was at the performance of these. I want to give a big thank you to our Patreon supporters, also our channel members. I made some new categories, some starting at like 99 cents. Now I'm trying to save up for a new camera. One of mine is just on the verge of dying. So if you want to support us either on Patreon or as a channel member, we would really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching.